Good afternoon and welcome to our April meeting of the Pinal County Community College Governing Board. We're pleased to be in the Aravaipa campus today and to smell the beautiful roses on the east side of the student building. I don't know who's taking care of those, but they are spectacular. You're doing that? My compliments to you. They're gorgeous. We will begin today after we call the meeting to order by offering the Pledge of Allegiance. Dan Millier is going to lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Call to the public. We have one individual who has requested a few minutes to visit with us. We'll call and turn the time to Jose Gomez.
I guess I would just like to start out by saying good afternoon to the Madam President, governing board members, President Elliott, Mary Lou, and all the guests here. My name is Jose Gomez. I am the current PTK president for AVC. Phi Theta Kappa is the honors association of two-year colleges. Alpha Theta Delta CAC's chapter was chartered in 1982 and has continuously run since then. For the last 15 years at least, we've been a five-star chapter. That entire time, out of 23 chapters in Arizona, 14 are five-star, and we are pretty proud of that. Thanks to the dedication and motivation of the officers and members in 2017, we won the following awards at the regional conference held at Cochise College in Sierra Vista. So we had Distinguished Chapter Officer Berenice Peleo, SMC, Distinguished Chapter Member Marcos Rodriguez, SMC, Distinguished Advisor Stacy Kine, SMC, Continued Excellence Advisor Award Heather Moulton, SBC Maricopa, Apex Award for Increasing Membership in 2017, College Project Honorable Mention, Distinguished Chapter Award Honorable Mention, five-star chapter status. PTK and Honors Program are grateful for the support of the Governing Board. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate that. We'll move next to the action items, approval of minutes.
I would make a motion that we approve as written.
Thank you. I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Miller. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll.
Wait a minute.
I'm waiting.
I'm sorry, it was so loud. I had a question, and it's in regards to the second page. Excuse me, the frog got me today. It's under community, and number 1 says to maintain community education enrollment at 1,400, but then number 2 says to increase the number of community education courses. The logic tells me that if we're increasing the number of courses, we may exceed 1,400. Can someone comment on that?
If you recall, Dr. Banks, when we set all the monitoring reports for the board, these two are both monitoring reports, and I think you might recall, I guess it was December at our board retreat, that the governing board decided to keep the community ed enrollments at 1,400, but they wanted to increase the number of classes, maybe offering a different variety. And so these two measures, 1 and 2 on community, were taken for the strategic plan directly from the board monitoring reports. So we can certainly, I think they're reflected correctly in the minutes, but we can certainly in June, when we have your second board retreat, we can revisit this. And if the board wants to change that particular monitoring report goal to something different, then we can adjust it, and that will impact the strategic plan as well, since they're both closely linked. And maybe some of the other board members just remember that discussion in December of the rationale and might want to jump in.
No, I remember you saying that there would probably be adjustments, and nothing was in concrete yet. Excuse me, I'm sorry about this. So thank you very much, Dr. Elliott.
Was there an adjustment to the minutes that you wanted to suggest?
Not at this time,
Okay.
because we're going to have a special session
Very good.
looking at target rates, so there's no need to make any adjustments at this time.
Exactly. Well, the motion is to either approve the agenda or the minutes, or adjust them. And if there's no adjustments, then are there any other discussion relative to the minutes? I'm sorry to have cut you off. Appreciate you speaking up. All right. Let's proceed to vote then. Those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. The minutes are approved. The next item under the action item list on the agenda is consideration of the consent agenda. Pleasure of the board.
Sir Chair, I have one suggestion, that instead of in one fell swoop to have an action to accept or reject the items, that we take each item individually and have a yay or a nay.
All right, is that a motion?
I can make it one.
Please.
That the consent items will be considered separate from one another and that the members of the board would say yay or nay to the items.
I have a motion to consider each of the consent items individually. Is there a second?
Excuse me, but before we consider that, can we consider the numbers? Are we talking lots or 3 or 4? Help me out, somebody, because I don't know.
Well, the decision that we need to make at this time, we have 3 choices. One is to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 2 is to remove a select item from the consent agenda and discuss that individually and act on it individually. Or the third option is to remove all items from the consent agenda and discuss each of them separately. To do so, either one of those 3 options requires a motion and a second. I have a motion to remove all items at this time. I do not have a second.
Wait a minute. I'm not requesting to remove all items. I'm requesting that they get reviewed individually and not unless there is a single item embedded in, let's say, the curriculum committee report, that the curriculum committee report would be yayed or nayed, unless there's a course that's in question. That's an example. Have I confused everybody?
You've confused the chair, which is easily done.
No, I think I'm the one. Okay, let me take it from the top. For this meeting, personnel report, governing board minutes, and or meeting, I'm sorry, not minutes, and curriculum committee approved proposals are asked to be yayed or nayed by the governing board. I am suggesting that there be 3 questions. Personnel report, yay or nay. Governing board meeting, yay or nay. And curriculum committee approved proposals, yay or nay.
All right, so if we are going to discuss those issues, we have to officially remove them from the consent agenda, and that requires a motion and a second and a vote. Would you like to, the first motion that I received was to remove all items from the consent agenda to be acted on individually. I do not have a second on that, therefore I'm declaring that motion void. Would you like to make another motion and specifically state the items that you would like to remove?
At this time, I'd like to see the items, maybe removed is not the right word, maybe separated would be a better word. I would like to see the 3 items separated for voting. That's my motion.
It requires a motion to do that. Is that a motion?
That's my motion.
Okay. Do I have a second? I do not have a second for that second motion. Is there an alternative motion that anyone would like to make? The chair would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I would make the motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by saying nay?
Abstain.
I have 4 ayes and 1 abstention to pass the consent agenda as presented. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I would just make a comment to the audience. What you're seeing here is evidence that there is no collusion before the board meeting by any of the board members. We don't talk about these things beforehand. And what you're seeing is democracy in action. All right, we have approved the consent agenda. Next item on the agenda is the personnel report. Brandy Clark. Mr. Bach, are you going? Did I miss that? Oh, that was the consent agenda, Rick. Sorry about that. Approval to publish the 2018-19 budget. Mr. Vodka. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair, governing board members, Madam President, Secretary, colleagues, and any guests or students here with us this afternoon. This is our annual budget approval in terms of publishing, and April is our tentative budget to publish the budget, and in May we do the final approval. So I'd like to review the 3 schedules that are sent to the state. This is for the fiscal year 19 budget. We have 3 schedules. You have them in your packets, and they're also up on the board there. First one is Schedule A, which is our overall summary. And the first section is our current operating and the plant funds. The operating funds are increasing overall by 1.1%. When you look at the operating and the plant funds together, they are decreasing 37.4%. And that's mainly due to the current year activity in terms of the construction. We will be nearing the end of the construction expenditures by the end of June this year, just a few left in the first quarter of the new fiscal year. Therefore, you see a big decrease in our plant funds. But the operating fund has an overall increase of 1.1%. Another thing to highlight here is the personnel compensation section, which is section 2. There you will see that we have overall, when you look at employee salaries, retirement, and any other types of benefit costs, healthcare costs, we only have a 0.4, so that's 0.4 of 1% increase overall. And that was due to a lot of reviewing of particular budget line items, because we did present a cost of living adjustment for staff. And that cost of living adjustment for all staff, including part-time and students, represents approximately $750,000 as an increase. So we did have an offset in salaries in terms of reduction in positions, and also a reduction in part-time salaries. Therefore, you see the reflection is only a 0.4% increase overall. Our property tax levy. Very good news here. One thing to highlight on the property tax levies is you'll notice that our total property tax rate is going down by 7.1%. The primary tax rate is going down 2.5%, but the secondary tax is going down 40%. You may wonder, why is that such a big decrease? And that will be an anomaly for 2 fiscal years. We received word from the county that we have, when we opened up the bonds for the principal and interest payment, we have some dollars that are in reserve. And it all has to do with the timing difference of when tax payments are made, our fiscal year, the calendar year. So we are using up the reserves that are set aside by the county. Taxes already collected. We're going to use those up for the next 2 fiscal years, fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 20. So you'll see a decrease in the secondary tax rate. So all that really is bond and interest monies already collected and to be used for over the next 2 years versus levying new taxes for our bonds. But the property tax rate increase for primary is actually a 2.5% decrease in our tax rate, which is about 5.6 cents. And you'll see the maximum allowable property tax levy is $65,210,000. Our levy for next year is only $51,268,000. So we are still significantly below our legal limit of approximately $14 million below our legal limit, or where we could be with our property taxes. Would there be any questions on Schedule A?
If I may ask, will this
Yes, sir.
be in various county newspapers published?
Yes, this will be published starting next week or the week after. I have to look at in all of the circulated newspapers throughout the county. Moving to Schedule B. Schedule B represents all of our revenue sources. We call it resources for the state budget. Obviously, our 3 main sources being the tuition, tax dollars, and state dollars. One thing to highlight here is our state dollars are going down from 1.7 million to 1,507,000. It's another decrease of $216,700 in our state funding. I think every single year that I've been here, we've presented a decrease in state funding. So what that means to the overall budget is our state funding of 1.5 million is now dipped below 3% of our total budget. It's actually 2.9% of our operating budget is only funded from state dollars. We did receive a portion again for STEM dollars. That's the $96,500. That's exactly the same amount that we received the current year. Everything else is pretty straightforward. You'll see at the bottom of the first column is our policy reserve. The board does have a policy to maintain 25% as a reserve of the cash balances. And our total revenues for all funds is the last column, which is $81,867,050. And that matches exactly the third page, which is Schedule C, which lists out all of our expenditures for all of the funds. So what we are proposing is a balanced budget, also total expenditures of $81,867,050. And Schedule C, you'll see, is broken out by the various expenditure categories that we have as reportable to the state, meaning instruction, public service, student services, etc. So with that, I'm asking that the board approve this preliminary draft of the 18-19 budget for publication. And after publication, this budget cannot be increased. It can only be decreased for our next meeting. Be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, that concludes my report.
Any questions from the board?
Okay, thank
No
you.
questions. Hearing no questions, the chair would entertain a motion to publish the 2018-2019 budget as presented.
I move to make a motion on said statement.
Thank you. I have a motion to publish. Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to publish the 2018-2019 budget as presented. Discussion? Hearing no discussion, proceed to vote. Those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We will next move to reports. Our first report will be from Dr. Jackie Elliott from the Central Arizona College President. Dr. Elliott.
Thank you. Good evening, or good afternoon, everyone. Board of Governors, Madam or Sir Chair, faculty, staff, guests, and I think we have some students here as well, so welcome. I have a couple legislative updates for you. In particular, the governor has signed the dual enrollment homeschooled bill, which permits homeschooled students to fully participate in the dual enrollment program through community college districts. So that has been signed by the governor. The second piece of legislation that I want to highlight is the public meeting bill that expands the definition of a public meeting to include one-way communication by one member of a public board sent to a quorum of members, resulting in an electronic email exchange of communication is now is as a violation of open meeting laws, has passed both the House and the Senate. So that is waiting signature of the governor. So that would apply to email communication from one board member to a quorum of board members that are engaged in back and forth. Additionally, the governor assigned changes to the statutes relating to data security breaches, such as requiring notification of individuals affected within 45 days and notification of the three largest nationwide consumer reporting agencies if more than 1,000 individuals are impacted. Failure to make these notifications can result in a fine of $10,000 per individual impacted. And this would include student information or employee information if we had such a breach of security. And then the governor has also signed an 8-year extension lasting until July 1st of 2026 of the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education. And as you know, that impacts our tuition, and we provide a discount to those students that qualify. So those are 4 pieces of legislation that have moved beyond either the House and or the Senate that of particular interest to the college. Do you have any questions about those 4 pieces of legislation?
How secure is our data?
It's getting a lot secure thanks to Candace and her team. We've had some growing pains with that, but we've had to take a lot of necessary steps. To be honest, in the past, our data was not as secure as it needed to be, and we've had to really step it up in the last 2 years to make sure that we are keeping not only our students' data safe, but our employees as well, and that is a top priority for us. And Candace's team does a great job with that. Other questions? Not okay. The district update. A couple of things I want to highlight. Sue Tatterson, who is the CAC Chair of Creative Arts and Professor of Digital Media, is the author of 2 photography books. We just found out that will be published by Foothill Media. The books are entitled "Abandoned Maryland: Ruin and Restoration" and "Abandoned Arizona: Ghost Town and Curiosities." So that's a great honor for Sue. The college has recently been awarded a $224,000 grant from the National Science Foundation Advanced Technology Education to develop curriculum for an advanced welding technician program and to test that in the classroom. The start date for the 3-year grant will be July 1st. So we're really honored to be able to be part of that. Last week, over 90 8th grade girls from the area from Casa Grande area attended Vidas Brillantes event. The event is a collaborative project that provides high impact interactive experience with college for Hispanic 8th grade girls from the Casa Grande area, and this event has really significantly grown over the next few years. I'm happy to report that the new medical lab technology program that you approved a few board members meetings ago already has 24 students applied, admitted, and ready to start the first cohort in the fall of 2019. This is a number that was a little more than originally anticipated, so we're excited about that. And then finally, the college recently received the 2018 Health Innovations Award for Empowerment from Empowerment Systems, Inc. for the newly accredited Community Health Worker Certificate Program. So those are a few highlights. And in your board book today is a correspondence from Tremaine Rousseau announcing the Faculty of the Year for each campus. And I won't name them all because it's there in front of you, but I am going to ask Sam to stand up because Sam is the Faculty of the Year from ABC. So we're really proud of that accomplishment for Sam and the other faculty as well. And that completes my report.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Elliott? Hearing none, we'll proceed then with the next item on the agenda, which is Business Affairs Reports. Mr. Waka again.
Thank you, and good afternoon once again. 3 reports for information under the Business Affairs. The first one is the monthly budget reports. This is through the period of time ended March 31st, which is now concludes 9/12 of the fiscal year. So what we're seeing through the 9 months is that our expenditures are at about 84.96% committed of the total budget, which is about a 3.3% increase from March of 2017, which was at 81.62% at the same point in time. So 9 months completed. The last quarter is remaining now for our fiscal year. Would there be any questions on the report?
Please.
You had noted in here that it's preliminary because the tuition revenue scholarships awarded are not included. Does that affect the cash balances on the restricted funds?
Cash balances, it may. Expenditures, it does not.
Okay.
If that's
And
what you're referring to.
It's the revenue is there. It's just not as part of the report, right?
Correct.
And if I recall, there were some other issues with the reporting you had with the new system. Are you okay with the progress?
Yeah,
far?
this was the only issue, and that's still an issue that's been resolved probably 90%, not completely yet, and that's the only issue remaining.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Other questions or comments? I think it's appropriate at this time, at 9 months into the budget, to ask if there have been any major surprises that caught you unawares or anything out of the ordinary.
No major surprises, just as I've mentioned at previous meetings, due to the expenditure limitation and a lot of these adjustments that we've been making to the budget and reductions in salary line items and so forth, we're going to be closer towards the 100% expenditure this year and years moving forward in particular versus the previous years where we spent maybe 88 to 90% or so. We're going to be closer towards a target of 100%. And our goal is for the following fiscal year, not 19, but 20, with the new system to do a zero-based budget as well. So no major surprises, kind of where we're
Well, thank you very much for bringing and reminding us of the increase that we're going to be seeing this year. Thank you for that. Very good.
Okay, the next item is the awarded purchases over 20,000. We have a handful of them. First one is the Analyzer Trainers, Moore Medical Group out of Farmington, Connecticut, $25,797, and that is to purchase training analyzer trainers for the Clinical Lab Assistant Program. Next item is the SAS migration fees, Blackboard Inc. out of Washington, D.C., $36,312.06. That is to contract for the software and the hosting of the migration. Next item, Community Events Performance Series, Mike Pettit Presentation Inc., Anaheim, California, $25,000. That is to contract for the performing artists in the Penn Center for next fiscal year. Next one, Data Closet Network Upgrades, Dimension Data, Charlotte, North Carolina, $172,169.61. That is to upgrade the data closet networks for the district. Next one is a seating for the student and TV rooms in Building A, Souder Education, Archbold, Ohio, $110,926.36. And that is for Building A is the towers at the Signal Peak campus. That is to purchase new furniture and seating and so forth for the tower. Next one, Fire Service for Santan Campus, Rural Metro Fire Department, Pasadena, California, $23,308.43. That is our annual renewal for fire service at the Santan campus. Next one is 10 Impression Command Centers, Staples Business Advantage, Phoenix, Arizona, $32,610.84. That is to purchase 10 new instructor stations for classrooms. The next one, Computer and Computer Equipment, CCB Technology, Racine, Wisconsin, $26,293.01. That is to purchase computers and accessories. This is for the Casa Grande Center, and this is with funds from the ABE grant. And the last one is Projector Classroom Upgrades, Troxel Communications Incorporated, Phoenix, Arizona, $24,488.66. That is to upgrade the classroom projectors, also at the Casa Grande Center, and that is also with the ABE funds. Any questions on these purchases?
Yes, I have one. For the Santan Rural Metro Fire Department, it says intergovernmental agreement. Does that mean that there was no RFP? I'm not familiar with intergovernmental agreements other than in another sense.
Correct. And Dr. Banks, we present all the intergovernmental agreements, I believe, twice a year for your information. This would not have been an RFP. This is the closest fire department to the campus, and we engage with this particular fire department, Rural Metro, as we do all our other campuses, as Signal Peak with the fire department that's down the street and so forth. We engage with the closest response team near our campuses, and this is the closest to the Santan campus. So it is not something that went out to bid.
Well, do we have any freedom to make this an RFP?
I would imagine we could if the board desires to go out. It's just a matter of response time. If we engage with somebody that's further from the campus, it would take them longer to respond to an emergency, because this also includes any type of ambulance services. And the response time would be longer if we engage with somebody that's further from the campus.
Right. But we can make this an RFP if we want.
I believe we could, if the board desired.
But not today.
No, I'm not going to go down that road. The last question I had is, was Rural Metro asked to show why they were asking for the amount of money that they did?
I'm not sure of your question. West World Metro,
Well,
another fire station response team?
Rural Metro asked for 23,308 and 43 cents, excuse me.
Correct.
Uh,
That's an annual fee.
Did they in any way show you their fee grades?
Who? This other company you mentioned?
No, Rural Metro.
Yes, we negotiate with them before we enter into this intergovernmental agreement. And we look at it based on the prior year service, number of calls, and also we do a comparison to our other campuses, such as the Signal Peak campus that has a rural metro, and what we pay over there versus what we pay elsewhere. So it's based on a combination of usage, prior usage, perhaps future usage, proximity, and response time.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Please, Dan.
I just had a question about the impression command centers. It's budgeted just south of 800,000. These are calling out 32,000. Is there a? I guess there's a plan to replace many more command centers. Is that what the budget is for?
There may be other command centers, but this is also part of a larger contract with the NJPA contract number, so it includes other information technology
Other
equipment as
wiring?
well. Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
One last item.
Oh,
The-
you have the ERP
The
update.
ERP update, yes.
Sorry
this-
about that.
That's okay. You have a one-page summary of where we stand with the ERP compared to the previous month. A couple of good things here to report. The financial aid automation system went up and live 7 a.m. on March 28th. Knock on wood, no glitches with that. Everything is working perfectly with the financial aid system. We're in the last quarter now of configuring, testing, and forthcoming training on our HR, finance, and payroll modules. So that is our last big push now to get that completed before the fiscal year, as we anticipate going live in July with the rest of those modules for campus management. And the last thing just to report is about 20 employees are participating in the Campus Insight Users Group. A number of them left over the weekend. They're there Monday through Friday. I believe a couple of staff are actually on panels presenting. A couple of the IT staff are on panels presenting. And myself, I fly out first thing tomorrow morning, and I'm also on a panel Thursday afternoon talking about our experience with 17 new prospective clients that campus management is bringing into the conference. So it should be an interesting week. So, any questions on the ERP?
I have one more for just general impression. How, what is the feeling of the staff as far as the progress, ERP level, comfort? Are we getting what we thought we'd get out of it, or is there still some? I know we mentioned a couple of minor things.
Yeah,
that are still out there, but
just a
overall.
couple of minor things on the student services end that we're still working on. I think overall the process has gone well. I mean, obviously there've been a few bumps in the road, some personnel changes on campus management end, but a lot of this is just a new process that staff and students are learning, and we do need some time to absorb it and go through a couple of cycles of the registration process, financial aid process, to see what other types of improvements can or should be made to the system moving forward.
Does it seem like it's helping connect the campuses a little more than in previous years?
Connect them in terms of
Data exchange, communication, being able to look at reports.
I think so, and it's brought all the staff. Well, I know a lot of the staff closer together because it's been such a close knit environment. I mean, people have been working late hours and weekends and everything to make this successful. So we certainly do believe that the data that's going to be produced from the system will be something that we can make decisions on in the future. Something that we really haven't had in the past. But it's a little too early to tell all of the benefits because the student system has just been live a few months, financial aid a month, and our financials and payroll and HR is all going live in 3 months. So,
Other questions or comments? I'd like to ask a follow-up question to Mr. Miller's last question. In addition to exchange and communication, are we seeing any evidence, because the campuses are all spread out so far, is there any evidence that there might be some synergy where this communication and this exchange of data might be enhancing outcomes or impacts?
that is certainly the goal. I think that's the purpose of the new system, is be able to get meaningful data out of the system and to use that data throughout the district and to have a consistent information from all of the districts. I know that it's sped up the process. I know financial aid is very satisfied with how the processing is now occurring, which has eliminated a lot of the manual steps that were involved in the past. So I think that just benefits and creates a better synergy throughout the college community.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Anything else under item 11, business affairs reports? If not, we'll move forward to item 12, monitoring reports. Mr. Vodka.
Well, I think this is a tag team report, but I'll get started on N6, board reports, board's monitoring reports. I'll take the first two. First one, 6.1, is expenditures per footsie. In your packet, you will see data 2014, 15, and 16. I'll cover 6.1 and 6.2. The expenditures per footsie, the board indicated, set a target, I should say, of approximately 2,000 in 2017. What this compares us is with the iPEDS report with about 30 peer institutions. And the issue, though, with the iPEDS reporting is that it's a year behind. So the latest data we have is 16, but that's really data from fiscal year 15. So fiscal year 16, 17, and actually 18, the year 9/12 of the year that we're in, is something that's not reportable yet. And that will have a little better results than what you're seeing in terms of the expenditures per footsie from 14, 15, and 16, which is really 11, 12, and 13. Some of the recent improvements that we've had on expenditures per footsie is, some were mentioned already. We have position justifications now are required for all full-time and part-time positions. We have the zero-based budgeting that was implemented last fiscal year for part-time and student employment, in which I mentioned earlier we plan on college-wide the entire budget zero-based for fiscal year 20. We've eliminated a number of part-time positions in the fiscal year 19 budget, and we are evaluating all the academic programming for each of the campus locations. And some of the additional planned improvements is the zero-based budgeting for fiscal year 20 and continuing to really right-size the staffing and the programs for each of the locations. So these results currently are below the target that the board set, but as I stated, this is actually 3 years old data, and what we've accomplished in 16, 17, and 18 will really be reflected in 18, 19, and 20 after the IPEDS report. No questions on 6.1. 6.2 is tuition and fees.
6-1.
6.1? Mm-hmm.
Yes, please. So you did talk about this lagging, and I understand that this is kind of our official measuring stick. Is there some intermediate one that could tell us what's happening as a better indicator in those? In other words, have less than a 3-year lag, maybe even a leading indicator.
We can actually pull our own full-time or our own expenditures per full-time student equivalent, and so we can pull 2017 and 18 and provide that to the board. The problem is we won't have the comparative data, but we can show, are we making more progress with the green bar going down towards the 2000? So we could certainly do that moving forward, and is because we submit this to IPEDS, and so we can certainly put in our own data because we know that.
Right. So the comparison then would be ours to ours previous year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Good. And then I remember maybe several months ago, Madam President, the full-time student equivalent, there was some consideration on that maybe changing because it wasn't real reflective. Is there any movement on that, or did I misunderstand you?
I think maybe I misspoke or maybe you misunderstood. One of the problems that plays into this is we have a lot of part-time students, and so our full-time student equivalent is also another variable that plays into this, not only our expenditures, but the number of students that are part-time, which means it takes many more part-time students for us to equalize a full-time student equivalent.
Okay.
That might have been what I was speaking about,
All
but
right, yeah.
really this speaks to how much we spend per full-time student compared to our peers, and as you can see, we're a lot higher than others.
All right. Thank you.
Speaking of part-time and full-time, can you give us a ballpark figure what we have as of today in relating to, is this a part-time college, is this a full-time college, or a little bit of both?
In terms of staffing numbers or?
In terms of those green bars.
I think if you don't mind, Chris, I'll
Oh,
kind of
please.
jump in. I think we need to serve both full-time and part-time student, but what we see is a majority of our part-time students are enrolled in 9 to 11 hours, which tells us that perhaps maybe at one time they were enrolled full-time and they might have dropped a class during that first week of school, or some other variables play into play. So when you look at a lot of our students who are part-time, they're in 9 to 11 hours, which means they're pretty close to that full-time number. And so I know Jenny and her teams have really been looking at some different strategies. I know Mary Kay and academics is looking at some strategies to allow students to add a class back in that first week of class. If they should have to drop something, you know, life happens. My babysitter fell through, my work schedule changed. But I think, you know, we have to serve students who want to go part-time, but mainly I'm looking at that band of students who are 9 to 11 hours, which tells you they're pretty dang close to being full-time.
Yeah.
Something must have happened. So good question.
Does this include the dual enrollment students as well?
Yes, dual enrollment. This is all of our head count, our full-time student equivalent.
6.2.
6.2 is tuition and fees. The board set a target for the college to be at or below the average of our Arizona community colleges. We are slightly, there it is, we're slightly below right now. If you recall, we had no tuition increase for fiscal year 19, the year coming up. And we continue to have an evaluation of all the fees that are charged for the courses. So that's not only a recent improvement, but also a planned improvement, as we have a yearly evaluation where the deans and department chairs review all of their courses to see if there's any fees that need to be increased, decreased, eliminated, etc. And we continue to monitor what all the other Arizona community colleges do in terms of their tuition. So at this point, we're actually below the target slightly, and that concludes my report on 6.2. Any questions on tuition or fees?
That's a good one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Dr. Gilliland.
Good afternoon. This is really a tag team, but I'm going to greet you all anyway. So good afternoon, Board President Gibson, members of the board, Dr. Elliott, esteemed colleagues and guests. Continuing on with the report is the average class size or average course size. Another method of demonstrating the college's optimizing fiscal resources is through average course size. The National Community College Benchmark Project, or the NCCBP, collects national data regarding average course sizes. The board adopted the target of 18 for the target average size in 2017. The college has trended slightly towards that target as shown in the figure. So what we're seeing is that actually we've gone a little bit down from that target just over a couple of years, but we're pretty close. And I think that downward trend is because we've lost a little bit in enrollment. But overall, we've leveraged a lot of efforts to raise the lower limits and to increase class size, and we really believe that's going to improve going forward. So our recent improvements include a low enrollment threshold that moved from 12 as the lowest limit for a class to up to 15. We've consolidated smaller sections into fewer larger ones, so that's a good effort, and that will be ongoing. And we also have included discussions of class size goals on agenda items all through the academic divisions at all of our meetings, dean's meetings, academic leadership meetings, division meetings, and so on. So we are mindful of this and discussing it at length all the time. Our planned improvements include a class size threshold going from 15 to 18, so actually pushing that lower limit up a little bit more, so it will produce better results. A go, no-go date, meaning that any exceptions need to come to the VP of Academic Services or Academic Affairs 2 weeks before the semester starts instead of too close to that limit. And finally, we're expecting that the new ERP system will also produce more effective tools to assist us with maintaining with scheduling, so that we can produce more effective schedules, looking across the district and really keeping an eye on those schedules. So, any questions about that or the efforts that we are putting forward? I will just add, it's a little bit, we like to make this a science, but it's also a little bit of art as we anticipate student need and enrollments and what we need across this rather large district. But I think we're all working very hard to meet those goals. So thank you. And we will move on next to 6.5, 6.4. Okay.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So the section that I'm presenting on today is actually the percentage of students receiving financial aid, and this is excluding loans, so any type of scholarships or other aid that they're receiving. And as you'll see, we actually have exceeded the goal of 50%, which is the goal that was set by the governing board, and we're at 51% now, which in comparison to our peer groups is very good, much higher than the 40% that is seen by our peer groups. Some of the recent improvements that we think have led to this, and it's going to touch a little bit on what you had spoken with Chris about the Nexus implementation, is the automated financial aid process has been tremendous in helping us to make improvements, where our financial aid staff is working towards being able to be much more responsive to the needs of students and helping students face-to-face, opposed to having to do a lot of the processing that they've done in the past. So the changes that we're seeing, especially with the automation, is helping for some of the things that we used to have to go in on a monthly basis and manually submit to the Department of Ed or manually submit to different people now will happen on an automatic basis, which again frees up the time to be able to work directly with students. The other part is the increased collaboration, and I know you mentioned about collaboration among campuses. One of the things that we've seen is a collaboration among different departments. So definitely the connection and nexus between registration and student accounts and financial aid in different areas is much greater than we've seen in the past, which has really forced a lot of great relationships and communication, I think, across the district as a whole, both with the training and also understanding that something that we may do in student services has a direct effect on student accounts in a way that it didn't in the past system. So I think that's a positive for all of us to learn more about different areas and understand the workings of the college as a whole, opposed to in our siloed departments and just the areas that we work on. So there certainly have been bumps in the road, and I'll speak on behalf of student services when I say there have definitely been lots of frustrations with learning a new system. Things that for people who have worked for the college for many years took a very short period of time to complete, now are taking longer because they're learning the process. So we know that in time, I firmly believe that we'll come back and be able to report very positively that the processing has improved, and our what we are able to serve students has really improved as well. There's been a change through the Department of Education in when financial aid packets or FAFSAs are due are available to students. It's changed from being in, and it just now I have a financial aid person, from January before to October now. So students are able to complete their FAFSA much sooner than they could in the past, which again helps them to prepare and get ready for the next semester. So we believe that has helped as well with this increased number. Planned improvements, we're looking at combining early college and First Step into one high school scholarship program. The two were very, very similar. They started very differently years ago, but they're very similar now, but do have some different requirements and applications and things like that. So we think that consolidating those two will increase the number of students who may participate. We also are reevaluating institutional scholarships to expand opportunities. So not necessarily increasing the overall dollar amount that we're providing to students, but really looking at who are the students that we're serving and how can we serve more students with our institutional scholarships. And then also continued partnerships with our foundation and external agencies to continue providing additional funding for students. So I think we're definitely moving in a great direction, with 51% of our students receiving some type of aid, again, much higher than our peer group, and we feel that we are able to serve many students. And I wanted to kind of wrap this up as a whole, just with saying that the overall goal, and why you're hearing kind of from multiple people throughout the district, and another example of us working together, is this ends is related to stewardship, as you'll see at the top, and ensuring optimization of fiscal resources, both through a balanced budget, but also through the way that we're serving our students and communities. So overall, you've seen the first four of the six. You've seen the first four of, are there 8, 9, 7? In these ends, if you go to the first slide. 7. So we've gone through the first 4. Next month, we'll go through the last 3, which I think that's the Chris show next month. And then we'll move on to end 7. So throughout the entire year, you'll start to see this and see kind of how we're moving through the process of demonstrating where we are for all of these ends. So, okay, any questions?
Going back historically to 2016, correct me if I'm wrong, we had engaged in what was called the purge. And the purge was designed to remove students who did not pay on time. It also removed students who needed financial aid. So could the 2016 bar on this slide be a false positive?
I don't believe so. I look at the purge a little bit differently, I guess. It does, students are purged from the system for non-payment, but it's if they don't have any of those things in place. So when you're talking about financial aid, if a student is in process of going through their financial aid, if they've turned in the documentation but it hasn't been packaged yet, or there are different scenarios where we would quote unquote save students because they were midway through the process and maybe it was at a point where we had something to do, but the student had done their part. We really look at the purge as a way to encourage students to complete things sooner, to make sure that they're not coming in registering for classes. Well, I'm already registered, so I'm not going to, worry about my financial aid quite yet. It's helping students to be proactive so that when they start the semester, they're able to start successfully. So we're trying to educate students. I think it was perfect timing when the Department of Ed changed when students could complete the FAFSA and moving it back to October because it helps to even further encourage students to do things early. So we do call campaigns. We reach out to students to let them know, there's a possibility that you will get purged based on the information that we're seeing because you haven't made a payment or you haven't applied for a payment plan or you haven't completed financial aid. So I think this is an accurate number, and I think we're seeing that students are really starting to realize that they do need to be more proactive in securing their financial, however they're going to pay for their college ahead of time. Does that help to answer?
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I have no other items on the agenda other than item 13, which is our next board meeting. Announce that as May 15th, 2018 at the Signal Peak campus at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Any questions about our meeting change? Very good. Would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Have a motion.
Second.
Second. Well, that was fast.
We're ready to get out of here.
Second.
And I suspect that means there's a third and a fourth also down there. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, we'll vote in favor of the motion. Those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.